It is, hands down, one of the best decisions I have made as part of my Toastmasters journey. Hi, my name's Charlene. I'm a Toastmaster from Queensland, and that decision was to accept my club's invitation to become a club officer. But I often see people are quite reluctant to take on club officer roles. And I think that's a shame because they're missing out on all the great opportunities that come with being a club officer. Throughout the From Member to Leader podcast series, we're going to be looking at each club officer role in turn and having a chat with someone who's a current member serving in that role to find out what they love about being a club officer in Toastmasters. I hope that through our conversations that you may be inspired to take the invitation from me to have a chat with your club about the possibility of taking on a club officer role. Today we are talking all things treasurer, the person who looks after the money. The treasurer works with the club executive committee to create a budget at the beginning of the year and then to monitor and oversee that budget throughout the year. They reconcile all the deposits, expenditures to make sure everything balances and just making sure that really accurate and clear records are being kept. They report on the budget to club business and executive meetings, manage the club's bank account, and they are a signatory on expenditures for the club. A treasurer may process some regular payments such as venue hire, as well as things like buying name badges, ribbons, any club materials. Where club members have, with prior approval, of course, paid for an item themselves, they would process that reimbursement for them in a timely manner. In clubs not using autopay or in clubs where there are additional club fees, they would also collect and record these and, where necessary, ensure that any fees are submitted to World Headquarters biannually before the required dates. So let's jump in and have a chat with a current treasurer. Today, joining us to talk about the treasurer role is Peter McRoberts. So Peter, can you just introduce yourself, let us know what your home club is that you're treasurer for and what makes it a special club?
Okay, nice to see you, Charlene, and good to be part of your podcast series. I feel quite privileged in that. With regards to my home club, I'm with Brisbane Sunrise Speakers, and Brisbane Sunrise Speakers meets the first and third Mondays of every month at 6:30 in the morning. So we used to be called Ipamea, which is after the Ipamea flower, which blooms at sunrise. Hence the reason Sunrise Speakers Club. And our club is really good because we've got a very varied agenda every week or every time we meet. And we have guests coming from all over the world because we have really embraced Room and Zoom. I like that better than hybrid. So anyway, so we can have something like about 8 people on Zoom and maybe 12 people in the room. So it's really very good. We're getting a lot of younger people and also younger members. And our membership at the moment is almost 21. So we're looking good, hoping to get Distinguished Club this year.
Fantastic. Sounds like a really vibrant club. I love the Room and Zoom. I hadn't heard that before. I do also belong to a couple of hybrid clubs, but I hadn't heard that particular term before. And I do also belong to an early morning club, which granted is not for everyone, but it's such a fantastic way to start off the day, I find.
Yeah,
Have you
very much.
belonged to other clubs in the past, or do you belong to any other clubs at the moment or have in the past?
No, I haven't actually belonged to any. I've only been in Toastmasters for about 8 years, and my wife Sharon, she's been a member of Toastmasters for many years, and we like doing things together. And Toastmasters is one of those things that we can do together, and also it adds a lot of variety because over the last few years we've been travelling a lot overseas, and almost every country we've been to, we've slotted into Toastmasters. So we've had clubs in Canada and America and England and Ireland and Scotland and even overseas further afield than that, like New Zealand. It's a long way away. and also Tasmania. So we've had lots of great experiences with Toastmasters, and it's like being in a big family. So we enjoy doing things together, and also around Queensland, we've been in quite a lot of other clubs. In actual fact, yesterday we were up at Mooloolaba at a club up there that we've Mercury something or other. But yeah, so we were up there yesterday, so it was really good. We enjoy it. It's good fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really giving you instant connections anywhere you go in Australia and the world. That is super cool.
Absolutely, yeah.
So obviously you love being a Toastmaster, only 8 years. What made you decide to take on the role as treasurer? Why is it the best club officer role to take on?
Okay, do you really want the truth? I gather that's a yes.
Let's go for
Okay.
it.
Your silence is very demonstrative. Yeah. No, I took up the role of treasurer because nobody else wanted it. We had a treasurer that suddenly got orders to relocate to New York, and all of a sudden somebody had to put their hand up for treasurer. So I put my hand up for treasurer, and I think it's a great role because having done a couple of other executive roles in the club, I've now been doing treasure for about 3 years, 4 years, and it's really good to be able to keep the track of the finances of the club, which is very important. And because we're very involved in Room and Zoom, we also have to make provision for upkeep of and maintenance of equipment. And every so often we've got to buy new lights or new microphones or USB cables or those sorts of things. So yeah, it's good to be able to have a finger on the pulse, but also it's good to be able to join with the executive and say, this is where the club's at. We need to look at doing something. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. In the role of treasurer, what skills and knowledge have you used, developed, or learnt in this role? What could someone expect to get out of this role in terms of skills and knowledge and development?
I think the most important, or one of the most important things is, because I think every part of the role of treasurer is important. So I think the idea would be to have some sort of an idea. Now, I'm not an accountant, all right? I can balance my books. That's about it. But I think the most important thing would be to have a good handover from the previous treasurer. If you've got a treasurer that knows what he's been doing and he's got good records, that would be one of the most important things, is to have a good handover. Secondly, you need to be structured, because at the very beginning, when you change accounts from one person to another, there's a lot of rigmarole now because the bank uses what they call Know Your Client, or KYC, and that's very important to follow the bouncing ball. But even more important with the bank is to get a person in the bank that really knows what you are doing as a Toastmasters club. They've got to realise that you are a not-for-profit, and the way the money comes in, the way the money goes out, the overall arching Toastmasters organisation, they've got to have a good idea of where that is, because that makes or streamlines the handover from one person to another, signing of people, taking people out of the register, putting new people into the register, having at least 2, maybe 3 people that can sign off on the account. So everything's done online these days, where we used to have checkbooks and things. Now it's all done online. So you've got to make sure that you've got all of that up to scratch. Passwords, 2 sets of authentication. So when I take money out, it comes up and says you are you. It comes up on my phone and things like that. So all those things are very important to have down. And another thing I would say would be really important is to get a spreadsheet that you can work with, ins, outs. I, for a couple of years, was playing with a spreadsheet that wasn't really very successful. So I happened to ask an accountant friend of mine, and I said, I'm doing this treasurer for the club, and can you help me with a spreadsheet? So I told him what I wanted. He gave me a spreadsheet for dates and all the different items to it. And then he also put down little drop boxes for me. So when I go into money coming in, receipts, I could just click on that and it all came down. So, summaries, printing, club fees, Toastmasters International. And then on the expenditure side, exactly the same. And in the next column, everything gets totaled up. So when you've done your reconciliation with the bank, put in all your invoices and receipts, it all tallies up to exactly the same thing. So at the moment, I cross my fingers because I've just done a reconciliation and the bank statement and my spreadsheet all come together. So yeah, it's a big job, but the other important thing is don't get overwhelmed with it, because 9 times out of 10 inside your club, you've got somebody that you can tap on the shoulder and say, please explain, please help me. So yeah, it's a great role, and yeah.
I think in any club officer role, that thing about there's going to be someone in the club who can help you. There are people to reach out to for support. There are people who can point you in the right direction and give you assistance. You said that it's a big role. How much time a month do you dedicate to the role of treasurer? And are there specific times of the month or times of the year when things, absolutely have to be done at that point in time?
On the average per month, I would say it costs me 15 minutes. So it's not a big time consuming role. I've got it. Well, I mean, having done it for a number of years now, I'm pretty streamlined. So we rent our room, and when we've rented our room, we get an invoice from the place that we rent from. The money goes automatically out of the bank. So when I get the invoice comes through, which is also a receipt, I then just click in spreadsheet, do the spreadsheet, and then once a month I go into the bank and reconcile the bank with my spreadsheet. So it's not that bad. The most important and the busiest times would be in the accruing of membership, which is April and October. So as the treasurer, I endeavour to send out an invoice to every member with what the breakdown is, the contact details for myself, and make sure that they understand the banking details as well. Because when you get that money in, now you've got to send the money to TI in America. So as a treasurer, you'll have a credit card which comes through the bank once you set up your accounts. So what I do is I wait till I get a majority of the money through, and then in one transaction, I pay the money to TI. That cuts down on international fees as well, because every time you do an international transaction, that incurs fees and can eat into the club funds. So I usually wait till their maximum amount of people have come, then I do it. Some other treasurers, every time they get a payment, they flick it off to TI. That can work for them, but I think it does eat a little bit more into the fees. These are the sorts of things that I juggle anyway when I'm acting as treasurer.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of just keeping track of things, keeping an eye on what's coming in, what's going out, making sure that's all balancing, getting that transfer through. Do we need to be a maths wizard coming into this? Do we need to have a background? I know you said you're not an accountant or anything. If you're talking to a young person who, most finance knowledge they have is getting from pay week to pay week, can someone like that come into this role and be successful in this role?
You can be successful in the role by putting your hand up and saying, I want to grow. I mean, Toastmasters is where leaders are made, and it also helps to make people better. And I've found that doing the work of treasurer, I've had to interact with a lot of other people. I certainly go to all the club officer training, which I can certainly recommend. Some of it is like watching grass grow. Most of the other things, you get the opportunity to speak to other treasurers, and that's really instructive because they can maybe point you in a good area and give you another tip that you're not using. Having a background in accounting, no, the only thing I would say possibly is you need to be structured. You need to have a bit of self-structure and discipline in your life. So I'm a strong adherent of running from a diary If it's not in the diary, it doesn't happen. Also, setting time aside in my diary, like every Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock till 4 o'clock, I've got a thing there for Toastmasters. During that hour, I'll go in and do the reconciliation. And you get into that habit, it becomes a really good habit for you to remember and to learn. Because when you go and put your hand up for area director or district director or other directors' roles, then everything sort of comes in together. And starting with treasurer, sergeant at arms, and that sort of role in the club is really very beneficial. Yeah.
Ultimately, being in charge of the bank account and the money might sound like a big responsibility, might sound like something a little bit overwhelming. What advice would you have for someone coming in that's kind of like, oh, is this role for me? Can I do this? I'm not sure. What would you say?
If in that case, then what I would say is I would see that your club's got a mentor. And if you've got a personal mentor in the club, then ask that mentor to mentor you through this process as well. If for nothing else, it's a second pair of eyes looking at everything. And also remember, you've got a second and third pair of eyes on the bank account. And you also want them to log into the bank account every so often just to make sure that they're okay with what you're doing. So when I got, just for example, when I got the bank accounts and everything else from the treasurer that suddenly went to New York, I wanted to be very sure that we weren't actually paying for his air ticket. So it's important. It's important to be very aware of that. So also, it's a good honesty thing. You know, you've got to show your own personal integrity and your own personal honesty, because it's not your money, it's somebody else's money, and you're just a custodian, dare I use that word, of that money. So you want to make sure that the club continues to be a club in good standing, because if you don't do the accountancy of the treasurership right, all of a club sudden your club members may not be able to enter competitions because they're not in a club of good standing. If you haven't paid the accounts, or maybe you're using the account to pay your morning coffees in the morning, that's not a good thing. So, I mean, I'm being a bit extreme there, but it's the face-to-face reality of it. Yeah.
It is. And it's interesting you talk about that building trust, because I can imagine for someone who's, perhaps building a resume as a young person or building experience, being able to put on that, hey, I was a treasurer for an organization. This group
Yeah.
of people trusted me to take on this role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So it shows you've got integrity and there's a lot of trust there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Has there been something that surprised you about being treasurer that you weren't expecting when you took the role on?
I can honestly say the biggest surprise was actually getting lumbered with all the stuff from the previous treasurer. I got handed a plastic bag. I think it was it could have been a Coles bag, I think, or a Woolworths bag, and there was this folder with all this stuff. And then the guy turned around and said, "Oh, by the way, I haven't actually kept any receipts or anything like that because it's all on the net." And I'm saying, "What?" So that was the biggest surprise. So I had to go through all of that and try and start working it out for myself. So once I got that all organised and got the bank account reorganised and things, it's actually been very smooth sailing. The only thing at the end of the financial year, you've got to keep an eye on the balance and how much you've actually got going out, like room hire and things like that. Our club has been very good because we actually do speech crafts. We've done that into a number of outside organisations, and that's been it builds up our bank account and makes it a little bit cheaper for our club to, bring the fees down a little bit. So that's been really good. But you've got to manage and make sure the money comes in and the money goes out. Send out receipts for money coming in and also invoices so as you can actually get money in. So, yeah.
Fantastic. That was the questions I had that I wanted to ask today. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go today to hopefully inspire someone who's listening to perhaps put their hand up to have a go at the treasurer role in their club? Because I know it's one that sometimes people take on treasurer, and we're the treasurer for the next 10 years until something drastic, like we're going off to New York. And like you said, it is a great entry club officer role. So what would you say to people out there who are currently Toastmasters who aren't a club officer? Why should we be putting our hand up to be treasurer?
You want to put your hand up for treasurer because you get to know people better when you're actually dealing with them. And when it comes to money, there is a lot of, quite often, discussions come in. So it's like having a rolling table topics conversation with someone. They will look at it and say, oh, but I didn't see that. Okay, well, I've actually got that in this list here. Why have you got it there? Well, I think it works in for here. So you have this ongoing table topic type discussions. But if you're asked to be treasurer, I would say most definitely put your hand up. Take the experience because it will actually help you in your personal life as well as Toastmasters. Because all through life, you're going to have to deal with money. You're going to have to handle money either on the internet or something like that. And looking up and being a custodian on the executive for your club is a great area of trust, great area of confidence, and it uplifts your profile. And when I was in Japan, we used to say people had a hiroi kao, which means they had a very broad face. And when you have a broad face, it means you've got a very big outgoing group that know you, and you become known because, oh, he's the treasurer of that club and he's part of that club executive. So it makes it better. So the more you get and the more exposure you have in other clubs, you go to district training meetings, you go to district officer meetings as well, which also lets people see who you are and the way that they see you conduct yourself. They will say to you, how about becoming an area director? You know, we see you've done such a great job with the treasurer role. Would you think about taking on another responsibility? And at the moment, I'm doing area director and treasurer. So, yeah, it's all fun.
Busy man. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us today. And if our conversation today with Peter has inspired you to consider the role of treasurer or any other club officer role, I'm sure your current club officers, president, VPE, etc., would love to have that conversation with you.